Welcome to the Brickworks Podcast, an extension of the studio based here in Burnham-on-sea. Our aim for this podcast is to have a completely open forum for conversation. This could be about art, life, mental health, or even how the world is burning down around us right now. Whether you're listening to this whilst on a run or relaxing at home, we hope you enjoy our mild-mannered rambles. Thank you. My iPhone, I drop it on a regular basis, but I remember I bought the XS,
see, I've got the XR. Maybe the XR is like the Nokia of iPhones. Like, we don't know.
It's the Nokia 3810. It just takes an absolute beating and keeps going.
I've dropped it so many times this month. Like, my colleague will, I'll drop it. She'll be like, "Nah, your phone must be dead," and it's fine. It's ridiculous. Don't know.
Literally, I don't get that, because I remember I got my iPhone, and within 2 weeks I dropped it, cracked the screen, and it's been cracked ever since.
But cracked so you can use it? Or
yeah,
cracked?
it's like one crack that runs down the centre.
I've got stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've got one that doesn't affect it. But you know, when you get that one poor soul that drops it off of a chair that's like an inch off the ground, and their entire screen is obsolete.
And it's completely shattered into 1,000 pieces.
I really feel for you. You've not got luck at all. You've not got good karma.
It's weird though that iPhones break that easily as well. Like the fact that you can literally just drop it from an inch off the floor and that's it. The screen is completely demolished.
And then you can drop it off of
out your pocket and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's fine.
I'll be dancing around doing, well, it's a lie, not dance around doing the dishes. I don't do the dishes, but just dance around the flat doing stuff.
Yeah.
And my phone's flung out of my pocket and it's just gone over the other side of the room and it's fine.
It's been fine.
XR, the Nokia of iPhones, I swear.
I feel like you've just copyrighted that. It's now yours. It's a Nokia of iPhone.
Literally.
So how's it going now? What you been up to? What you been keeping busy with?
I'm quite, I don't know if it's bad or good, especially in the beginning of lockdowns. I'm quite inactive in the first few weeks. I think I really take advantage of the fact that there's nothing that we can really do, and I'll just binge everything on Netflix and Prime and everything. But then it gets to a point where I'm stir crazy, and then I'll kind of start to create. But one thing that was quite exciting, actually, I ordered I'm just doing this weird thing with my hand, as a zine or zine? Is zine. So a zine making kit, the DIY kind of ones. So obviously I know how to do them in InDesign and Illustrator.
Yeah.
The more photography side ones. But for drawings and stuff like that, you can make these little kind of, you've got this kit and it comes with coloured paper and stickers and a book binding thing. So I've ordered that, and that's I'm really looking forward to playing around with that and maybe making some limited edition one-of-one zines or something for when my site goes live. So that will be quite fun to play around with. And yeah, just little photography projects. Playing around with, as you know where I live, Well High Street.
Yeah.
I find there are so many really quirky personalities on Well High Street. It's
a proper little gathering place, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And you've got every kind of generation. So I'm doing a little project, but it's slow because I'm doing it either out of my window or when I'm outside, which is rare because it's cold. But where I'm kind of doing street photography of Well High Street, because there's a little old lady that always walks around. Anyone that's a local will know. Yeah. No matter what time of year, she'll wear full coat and Ugg boots, and even in the hot summer. And then there's another old man that just sits there in a Christmas jumper the whole time, just staring at people. And I find it quite interesting to document those people. But it's all just slow little projects at the moment.
But I think that's to be expected in some ways. I don't think anyone's really undertaking big projects right now. Do you want to move the mic a little bit closer?
You just don't want to...
so to everyone listening or watching this podcast, I taught Natalie how to use microphones literally as she first sat down.
He literally had to show me. He was like, no, you got to move it a little bit that way, a little bit. I'm like, I'm not.
It's so normal though.
I'm new
like,
to this, guys.
Yeah. Well, this is your first podcast.
This is my first podcast.
You're breaking that podcast virginity.
I
remember my first time, Nat. It was scary.
Bit exciting.
But yeah, I think like not many people are really like, they're not starting new projects right now. I don't think. I think like we're in such a weird transitional phase with this pandemic. I was thinking about this morning, knowing that we were going to sit down and probably get into it about politics, because
that's what we talk about naturally.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anyone that knows Nat, she gets on politics.
That's it. That's like the talking point. But like, I was thinking about it. I was like, we're in such a transition with this phase of the I fucking hate the word phase, but this moment of the pandemic in that
it's just a phase, Mom.
We've got to just a phase. We've got to a point where it's like the vaccines are now rolling out, which you know, I know people are anti-vax, whatever, and I'm not going to get necessarily into that.
Yeah, no.
But it is somewhat of potentially an end to this, or at least a normality could come back.
It's weird though, isn't it? Like, my flatmate was telling me the other day, actually, because I think we were talking about America, or I think we were talking about the pandemic, and I think I made like a pass-off comment that was maybe belittling it a little bit, maybe. Yeah. If I can remember rightly. And she kind of just went, yeah, but if you think about it, you don't think it's that bad when you're living it. And it's true, she was completely right, because it's like, we look at maybe what's going on in America and we're like, what the fuck? Yeah. But maybe like the rest of the world, or Europe or New Zealand, is looking at us being like, really, guys? Yeah, but you just don't think about it when you're the ones living inside it. So it's like, this is actually a pandemic that we've not seen for so long. Like, it's literally put the world to like full stop. Like, we saw dolphins in Venice, for God's sake. Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's almost like now we've come out of it and we're just a bit like, yeah. And it's like, wait a minute, hold on. We just went through that. That's not happened in
I think we're still going through it. Like, this whole new variant and all of that. It's like, this is the thing that I found really interesting. Sounds similar to yourself, is that there's a light to the end of the tunnel, to use lack of a better term. But then also, it's now worse than it's ever been at exactly the same time. Yeah, like,
the cases are almost worse than it was at the beginning, am I right?
Yeah. I don't think deaths are as high, but like the case numbers, especially, they're that's the first time I've had somebody literally just look like they're walking off of the podcast.
Bye, guys.
Like, mid-conversation, like, fuck it, I'm out. Like,
this is boring, I'm gonna get it. No, I just want to put my tea down.
But yeah, like, it's really weird that we're now at that stage where, like, it's the worst that it's ever been in this country, but then also we're coming to the end potentially because of these vaccines. It's like the paradox in that, and the mixed.
It's almost contradicting itself.
Massively. It's really weird when you sit down and actually try and divulge it, because it's so easy. Like, it's so easy to either get too invested in this stuff or not get invested at all.
I got to a point where I was watching the news all the time.
Yeah.
All the time watching the news. And I love my dad, but he's very good at, like, he'll send you a text of what's going on, and I'm like, oh my god, like, I'm panicking at 8 a.m. Like, but yeah, you're constantly, and I would like constantly be up to date, and it brought me like, pleasure's the wrong word, but it calmed me down watching the news and knowing what was going on. But it also really frustrated me seeing the government handling it so slowly or inconsistently and things like that. So I was like happy that I was being updated, but it was stressing me out because I was like getting so frustrated with how it was being handled. So I was like, it was almost contradicting itself with the help as well. I was like, the news is helping me, but it's also really not.
Hindering you at the same time. I think especially if you deal with sort of mental illness, like different mental illnesses, you know, I know that anxiety is a big one for myself, and there's a lot of power that comes from knowing what's going on, and that relieves some of your anxiety, knowing what's happening, but then also knowing that the situation is pretty fucking bad spikes your anxiety like crazy, and it's just really weird.
And so many of us are alone through it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't mean that like necessarily like mentally, we've all got people, but like physically day to day, you feel it a lot more. I mean, like last lockdown, I had one of my best friends staying with me. You know, Cloud, we've spoken, we're doing projects together. You know, and it was so much easier having her with me. And not that I've struggled this time, but it's a big difference.
Yeah.
You know, like I was talking to another friend of mine about it, and she was like, you really do notice it when you go from like every day seeing someone to then being on your own. It's quite difficult. And then when you've got all these people alone, and like even sometimes you feel bad for like, sometimes I think, oh, should I just pick up the phone and call someone? And then you're like, I don't want to be a burden. And then it's like, wait, you got to check that attitude. Like, are you a burden or are you literally just calling someone because you're feeling a bit?
Yeah.
And it's that whole
it's
thing.
That constant battle that, you know, one deals with regards to like, whether it's asking for help or just have a conversation. It's
like literally, do you want to go for a coffee?
Yeah.
Like,
you
sit in your car, I'll sit in my car, drive through coffee. Like, it's little things like that. And like, even, you know, Caitlin came home from work the other day and was like, how have you been? Are you all right? And I was like, yeah. She was like, you sure? Because you're not doing much. And I was like, yeah, I'm okay. I was like, I'm not low. I'm just, like, it's just not that when things were normal, that my days were packed. No. But it was like, you could go and meet your friend for a walk, or you could just go and meet your friend for a Costa. Yeah. And it's those little things that seem insignificant really buff out your day. It's those little things I miss.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to have conversations around like the little things of life, because I was speaking to another friend of mine the other day, and I think like we're at a stage now where society's shifting. Like I don't think we're going to be going back to a normality that we would consider normal. I think it's changed.
No, I think we're going to be wearing masks for a while, if not from now on. I think, which I don't think is a bad thing. Put a mask on a shop. What harm are you going to do? I think things are going to change. I can imagine maybe when cinemas are open, there will always be 2 or 3 seats within next to you that's going to be closed off. Maybe. I mean, though you say that, I've been looking at flights now, and they're not shifting those seats. They're not. No. Do you know what I mean? It's not like you go into a hospital waiting room and they've closed off certain benches. Yeah. It's like you see in the airports 2 meters apart, and then you're sat next to everyone on the plane, and it's okay. So it's interesting how some parts of society and business are really taking on these new rules or elements to make it safe, and then you've got other places that it's just like, what is the point of you doing these things here when you're going to just contradict them when you're on the flight, you know? But then it also comes down to, if you take half of those seats out on the flight due to social distancing, you've got to do 2 flights. So then sustainability comes into it. So there's it's always going to be a catch-22.
Totally.
And as much like COVID's not helped towards the sustainability issue.
Oh, it's fucked it. Like you know, we were talking about this before we came on the podcast.
Yeah, we were.
You know, it's I saw, you know, those Facebook videos where you're scrolling through Facebook, and then suddenly there's a video about the world burning down, and you're all
really
fucked.
Intense. Yeah, and it's got this slow,
and there was one of those. Yeah. There was one of those sort of types of videos, and it was of like people pulling face masks out of the ocean and stuff like that.
It's so bad.
And that was the moment where I was like, we fucked this. Like we have.
It just proves that we are really the worst race on the planet, really. Like, how are we capable of
literally destroying
it? I was watching that David Attenborough documentary, and he was like, genuinely, within 2 generations we've killed the natural world. Like, to be dramatic, but it's the truth. It's crazy.
We've made some forms of animals extinct.
It's literally crazy. There are good positive stuff happening too, though, if you follow the right people. I saw a mate of mine shared something on his Instagram story, which was quite cool, which are a bunch of kids, I think, around like Bali or that kind of area, that are like replanting coral reefs, and they've like planted like thousands at the moment, and they're like doing more and more and more. So there is good stuff happening. It's just, it's not outweighing the bad stuff at the moment, which that's the problem.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's like it goes back to this the idea of like knowing too much almost, because knowledge is power.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
But as much as I really struggle with ignorant people, because I'm like, please educate yourself. And especially when ignorant people come to me or my friends or minorities, that really annoys me to be educated. I'm like, it's not like I had one person be like, oh, explain the BLM, explain. And I'm like, it's not a person of colour's responsibility to educate you about racism. It is your responsibility to go and educate yourself. You're a grown-up. So it does really frustrate me. I think it's always good to have discussions and stuff like that, but it's not people's place to educate other people.
No, I know, and I totally agree. And I think, it is a case of, if you really want to understand, you have to go find out yourself.
Exactly.
And I think that gets instilled, because we're both from artistic backgrounds. We met at college, and I think we're lucky enough that gets instilled in us when we were younger, studying our art forms in a way. This idea of going to find your information. You don't necessarily.
And at college
ask.
as well, we were always talking, weren't we? Always like debating, and like questioning. I mean, I was always brought up to question everything. My dad always went, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Like, there is, but like someone's always going to break that boundary, aren't they? But like, it was that element of like, there's no such thing as a stupid question, because there's always room to grow. Totally. There's always room to continue to educate yourself and be educated. And luckily I was brought up with that mentality. You were brought up with that mentality, and then art college as well, I think, really gets you to break down those barriers and try new things. So we both are quite lucky in that sense. Yeah,
totally. And I think like, because so if I remember right, we did our BTEC together.
In 2013.
That makes me feel even older.
Or was it the 2 years, 2012 to 2013? And did you come to New York with us?
No,
you didn't, because we went to New York in 2013, I think.
So you went and you were on the BTEC when you did?
Yeah, I was in my.
Was it 2 years? Or was it one? I don't know. No, it was 2 years. We
were 2 years together.
Yeah, because we got split up into two groups, didn't we? I remember now.
Because I was so... if you look at my work back then, I was very commercial, very fashion, very editing. I used to airbrush the girls and everything. Whereas now, like, you ask Dulcie, one of like the models I work with the most, like, I do not do any of that. Like, I'm very like, you can just sit on your bed in your underwear and I'll just... it's very
sort of raw.
It's so different.
That's so interesting how you'll start. I think everybody it's natural to have a stylistic change, of course, or to develop your style, especially as you grow older with your experiences. But yours was quite dramatic, like, because
such a change.
Yeah, literally, it was like, so we finished college together 2013. And then the last time I hadn't seen you all the way up until last year.
Yeah, we literally lost contact, and then it was Facebook, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I was like, when I was starting to toy with doing like Brickworks and contacting creators and stuff, and I noticed you were living back in Somerset at the time, and I was like, fuck it, let's get dinner or something. And it was like, it's really weird to like, because I was saying this to you as we were walking into the studio earlier, but like, you've grown as well as like a person. I think like all of us have grown in some capacity, but it was like, you saw quite a shift, you know what I mean?
Are you sure that you're still Nat? Yeah.
Nat, are you still Nat?
Yeah. No, I think it's odd, isn't it? Like I was saying, I think I've grown up a lot. I was very naive when I was 18. Well, I went to college when I was 16 to 18, wasn't it?
I think we all are.
I was, we were all very... So I liked that, and I was very kind of happy-go-lucky as well, because I'd always enjoyed school. Don't get me wrong, I loved school, but I really did get away with murder a little bit, because I got on with the teachers. So I wasn't a teacher's pet in the sense that I did all the work. Yeah. But I was a kind of teacher's pet in the sense that I knew them. I would stay behind just to talk to them. So I would kind of give the teachers my attention. So I was never got in trouble, but I never did amazingly well. So I kind of just had fun in school. But I never shone academically, like, at all. So then as soon as I got to college, I was like, oh my God, I'm good at this. and I started to really succeed. So I think that really changed my outlook on all of it. So I was very, very like happy-go-lucky. And then I think you just change at uni, don't you? I mean, my stuff at early years uni was still very, very similar to college. It wasn't until I was halfway through my second year. I was literally halfway through my second year, and I remember I had to kind of go over my tutor's head to kind of get what I wanted. I think I've told you this story before.
I think you'd mentioned it to me, yeah.
But basically I started to really switch. I found a photographer that I really liked, and her work was so raw and documentary, very similar to what I do now. And I really liked it, so I kind of went, oh, fuck it, I'm going to just do it. And I had a room at the time where I was living, massive attic space and just chaotic as fuck, right? We used to call it the takeaway cave because I just don't cook. And I would just order in all the time and loads of people would be around. It was just messy. So I got a couple girls over and I just said, just have fun, just eat food, we'll order food, eat food, smoke, just piss about. And I just document the whole day. And I went to my tutor and he went, this is great, but he went, it's not commercial. He was like, this is for the BA course, you should move on to the BA course. And I went, no. I went, anything can be commercial, someone just needs to buy it. He went, no, it's not commercial, this documentary stuff, it's BA. And he just wasn't having any of it. Lovely guy, but he was just a bit like, no. So so we when we went to London, I organised a portfolio review with a documentary photographer, and I showed him the project, and he went, no, this stuff's good. He went, keep doing it, because he was coming down for a portfolio review and a lecture in the college, and he went, do a couple more shoots like that and I'll do a portfolio review when I come down. I did, and he was like, no, these are really good, I really like these. And because I went over his head and went to a documentary photographer, and the documentary photographer confirmed when I went, don't you think these kind of stuff would be seen in like ID magazine or Vice or Dazed? And he went, yeah, 100%. So when I kind of had a professional say that, then my tutor said, okay,
they're fine.
Yeah. You can do that kind of raw commercially documentary style, but you need to really show me in your evidence that it would be seen within these magazines. And then I did, and I could continue to do that on and did my dissertation and everything on that. But I really had to have the confidence and the guts to be like, I believe in this, and I don't want to move to a BA course because it will become much more fine art, and this isn't fine art, this is just documentary. I knew that it was documentary, but it wasn't fine art documentary. I think we have to be aware that they're still very different.
In some ways.
So I kind of just was like, I'm gonna just get someone else's opinion, but not once did I do it in a you're wrong. It was more of just a like,
I'm trying to re-educate.
And he, as soon as someone else said, he was like, oh, it's great. But it was interesting because the two BA teachers that had kind of gone from school to college to university to then teaching at university, do you know what I mean? Nothing wrong with that. But then there were two other teachers that were commercial, that had been hired, that had worked in London their whole careers and then had come in. And the two commercial tutors loved the work, and the two very BA honour tutors, it wasn't for them. They really didn't get it. It was quite interesting.
It is. I think the thing with it is, like, in the world of sort of documentary work, it's very easy to... like I had this conversation with Ryan, the previous guest on the podcast, and we were talking about documentary photography. Got like really into it. But for me personally, like, documentary work is entirely story based, so it normally has this quite deep understanding of its own context. I know that sounds really strange, but like, the work knows what the work is doing, you know what I mean?
It's got a consciousness of some kind.
100%. And I think there's a very fine line between, and it's hard to describe, but there's a very fine line between documentary style and documentary photography. You know.
You don't want it to just be, don't want it to just be the aesthetic. It's got to have
the body
that element.
Underneath
it was like I was saying on the phone the other day to you, like sometimes at my core, when people ask me as an artist, or what are you as an artist? Are you a poet? Are you a photographer? Are you an illustrator? Are you a whatever? And sometimes it really comes back down to its core as I'm a storyteller. That's what I am. You don't have to necessarily put a label on it. I'm telling a story. And for a while, sometimes I wouldn't put a photograph out there into the world unless I thought it was telling a story.
Interesting.
Sometimes I would look at an image and go, what's that model thinking about? Or what did the model do? Or what did that character do to get herself there in that situation?
Yeah.
And it's like, if a photo's not giving me that kind of thing, that doesn't say it's not a good photo. It doesn't diminish its worth. But I really do love those images that you can sit in a gallery and look at for an hour if you want to, and
where
really
they have a lot
take
to break
in
down.
that.
Yeah, totally. And
definitely.
I think like that is such a hard thing to do as well, to make an image that is like one that can sit and just be its own entity. I was saying, for me, I don't think I'm a very good one photo photographer. Like, I'm not very good at creating personally.
Much more a series.
Yeah, like for me, when I'm making imagery, I'm making it because it's telling a series of images. It's telling a story across multiple photos. I don't think I'm very good at that one. This is my piece out of this.
It's funny. It always brings me back to a photographer, and it's going to make me sound bad because I can't remember his name. But I'm probably going to explain it, and you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about.
Potentially.
He does. I want to say his name's Tim or Tom something. But he creates these insane setups, like insane. I think you know what I'm talking about. He'll take out a whole street, won't he? And he'll have lights and everything in there, and he'll have like alien kind of invasions. And you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know who you're on about. Why has it gone out of my head?
It's Tim something or Tom, is it?
No, I don't think it's Tim or Tom.
But it's that guy, I'm going to
Google it whilst we're doing this.
Yeah, he does these kind of almost street view scenes, and it's like a whole movie in an image. So he was really an inspiration for me early years of uni, because he was capable of telling like such a story.
Gregory Crudson.
That's him.
It literally, I didn't even. I was trying to Google it, and then as I was typing, I was like, Crude.
He was this like storyteller.
I think that has its own, like in its way, it's its own entity.
Yeah, and it was almost cinematic. And there was another photographer, a woman, that did a lot of self-portrait images.
Nan Golding.
She is amazing, but that's not. I don't think that's the one I was talking about. She's amazing.
I'm jumping the gun.
I'm just dropping every name I can think of.
Just throwing them out there. Seeing what sticks.
She did a lot of characters. So she would do like the Scream character, and she would do. Exactly.
I saw that work.
Black and white photographer. It's not Nan Golding, but I studied Nan Golding at the same time I studied this photographer.
Yeah. I swear I have a lot of knowledge.
We are qualified. I promise.
in some context.
But we graduated years ago.
I swear I saw her work. I went to a photo festival in.
She reminded me of Cyndi Lauper for ages, and I don't know why. But yeah. But
It'll
she
come
was
back
a
to me at some
character.
point.
It was really those kind of photographers that really inspired me to tell a story within a image or a couple of images. But you're very good at taking pictures of landscapes and architecture, which I've always struggled with. I'm much more I like to study the human.
I think your portraiture is like incredibly strong in its context. Like the images that I've seen that yourself has made, it's like they have their voice of themselves. Like I can feel the individual in the image, if that makes sense. Whereas I think for me, photographing people has never been something A, I've felt very comfortable doing, and B, think I'm very strong at. Definitely something I want to improve
Work
on
100%.
But I think I'm very interested in isolation and the idea of the alone, like being alone.
Yeah.
So if you look at a lot of the work that I make and or made, there isn't people in it. There's very rarely people in my imagery. The only people are portraits.
If they're quite, I don't know if disconnected is the right word, but it's very, like, it brings me back to, there was a great image of yours of a guy with his dog on what looked like either Burnham-on-sea seafront.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
God, that was quite an old one. That's a proper callback. Christ. I think that was at BTEC.
Yeah.
You've actually got pinned up somewhere. You're not telling me something now.
Oh, God. But, like, really, really good, but they're a lot more posed, aren't they? And a lot more formal.
Yeah, totally.
Whereas I will sometimes sit in someone's house and we'll just have a conversation, have a cup of tea. I'm not even going to pick up my camera for half an hour until you're comfortable. But like I don't know if I was saying, I used to get really scared of judgment from models when I was taking my time, or more like studio setups, you know, when something's going wrong and you're like, oh God, it's not going right, and they're looking at me and they probably want to go. And I used to cut shoots short because I was scared that I was keeping the model too long.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, it was a few things of like, and it built up my confidence, but it wasn't until, firstly, I wasn't getting the shots that I wanted because I was rushing the model. So I had to be like, stop doing that. If you want the shoot, you need to keep the model. Yeah. Also, the models would come back, so I'm like, obviously I'm not annoying them. And then, but it wasn't until I call her my muse because I've photographed her so many times. Dulcie once said, she was like, I love shooting with you. She was like, I absolutely love shooting with you. So it was kind of when I got that confirmation that I was like, okay, it's fine. The models are fine that I'm here all day. Yeah. It's fine that, so it was kind of like a build up of, the models want to do this. It's not, I'm not forcing them into this. Like, I'm confident enough with the idea, the concept that I'm trying to create. Yeah. And it's okay to improvise. It's okay if your equipment goes wrong. So it's kind of those like things. It was all like internalized. It was all coming from me. Weirdly, it wasn't coming from the models. It wasn't coming from anywhere else. It was my own anxieties being like, I'm not good enough, and the model's pissed off at me. And it's like, wait a minute, your anxiety's lying to you. Yeah. That's not true.
Yeah. I think it's so easy, especially like when you're working in like a person-to-person realm, like with portraiture or something like that, to let one's own anxiety actually ruin the process in a way. I think like it's because you're so invested in the work that you're making. Like it's you, it's a part of you, you know, your hands are holding the camera.
And you're up for judgment.
100%. And so you're naturally putting yourself out in a position for judgment, but you're actually judging yourself more than the other person's judging you. It's a really weird like conversation, and it's a conversation without words. That's the interesting thing as well. It's like there's no words happening. You're just, these feelings are happening, and they're very jagged. Off each other.
It's kind of like, and that could be like during the shoot, not during, you know. And sometimes when your inner monologue comes out, you seem, I don't know where those levels of anxiety come in when you're like, you're being unprofessional because you don't know exactly which location you're going to. Like, I like to sometimes just drive around, and I'm like, I'm just going to drive around, look for a location. And then sometimes I'm like, no, you should have scouted beforehand. You're not being professional. And it's like, you really can be way too hard on yourself. Yeah. Like, some of my best work, like hands down, some of my best work is when I've saying, right, we're done. I've got everything I need. Let's just piss about for a bit. And then they've relaxed, I've relaxed, and I've just gone. Yeah. And I've just snapped a couple. And it's usually those 10 images at the end that are the best. The strongest, yeah. Because they've calmed down, you've calmed down, you've said, I've got it. Yeah. We're good.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the golden ticket. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so, 100%. Yeah. Portraiture is such an interesting one, I think.
I love
portraiture.
It's like,
it's such a dynamic relationship that you're having. Yeah. And with people whom you may not even know very well, you know, like some, you know, I've worked with models here and there, not massively. And I may have spoke to them for maybe an hour before shooting, you know, and it's that dynamic, that relationship is like, you're trying to build confidence in each other really quickly. And sometimes, you can rush it, and you just, you're forcing something. Whereas like when I've done, so Treasure Island, which was like my big body of work, I suppose, I spent a lot of time with the steelworkers not making images. Like the amount of time that I spent with them, say I spent 3 full days with them.
You were only shooting them for like a day.
Yeah, not even that. Maybe a few hours. I was actually shooting with them. You know?
If you were shooting them for 4 days, oh my God, you'd be editing for a year.
Yeah.
Like, but
but it's like that, you know, going to the pub with them, having a chat, sharing some sketchy peanuts.
Building that dynamic.
Yeah,
exactly.
And building, especially in the world, in documentary work or a social documentary. There's so many fucking titles.
Oh, 100%.
So like,
it's a label for everything nowadays. We're in 2020, aren't we?
Oh, well, yeah, true.
It's just,
2021.
Yeah, 2021. Oh my god, get used to it.
But I think that's the thing is like, with Treasure Island, I wanted to approach the portraits in a different process because, like yourself in some manner, I think a lot of photographers are like this. You panic, or you're like, especially when you're in front of people whom you don't know, you're like, fuck, I've got to make an image, and then you end up shooting.
I've got to look good, and it's just like, no, and you don't have to do that.
100%, and you end up shooting something and then edit it, getting back, developing your film or whatever, and being like,
you're not happy.
Being like, I didn't make anything that I'm happy with, and trying to make something work out of a frame you don't like, you know what I mean? So with Treasure Island, I approached it I just want to know these people. I just want to spend time with these people because I want to develop the story and my understanding of the story that I want to tell, and also I want to build a bit of a relationship and in some cases a friendship with some people in this.
The amount of the friends that I have through modelling, like I mean, Dulcie, for example, I've been working with her. Our first shoot, she was 13. She's now my brother's age, like 22. It's crazy.
That is crazy.
Or actually, no, she might be 21. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's long, you know. So there are a couple of models that I would work with over and over and over again, which I really like. And you kind of build up this relationship with them. Yeah, and totally. It makes the photography better as well, because you're just even more comfortable with each other. Yeah. But there's something quite nice as well about photographing someone brand new, because sometimes, and it really is sometimes, I've had cases where, you know, when someone's in front of the camera and they really shouldn't be. And you're really trying, really trying, like, and it's just not working. And I've had to just be like, you know, I've had models where every time I'm pulling the trigger, they're like, done, you know, which is like the perfect, that's what you want, you know. But then I've had other ones that are like, and I'm like, okay, so if you just, and it's like, I love directing, but so I completely get it, like when it's too much or too little, but sometimes there's a level of anxiety and a level of stiffness and awkwardness that can be really stunning on camera. So I've had some cases, it was more when I was at uni, and I'd like book the studio and I had someone kind of come in, and I'd kind of have them sat down, and I'm an empath, so I'm quite good at reading people or their emotions or whatever. So it depends on the emotion, but sometimes I would just not speak to them at all. And I'd kind of just have them sat there in front of the camera for about 10 minutes, not say a word. And
why does this sound like a good social experiment?
and at a certain point, they would do something awkward because their body's kind of like, oh, I feel really like, you know. So they do a little like something, and then you'd get it and you'd have this great image. But sometimes it really wouldn't work. Sometimes they'd be really, really nervous and you'd have to come in and be like, hi, I'm Natalie, this is what we're going to do. So it really depends on the person. I think it depends on the experience and also the person's flamboyancy. I think modelling is, I think I've modelled like once or twice, like in uni and college, you know, just friends have asked or whatever. Well, is it? I got into modelling through photography because the amount of photographers, you know. And you end up getting in front of the camera at some point. Someone want to do a test shoot? I need to test this camera lens. Can you come? Fine. All right. It's like, okay, my modelling career starts now. Let me boost my portfolio real quick. Literally. But like, it's really interesting from a photographer's perspective, being on the other end of the lens, like what's quite nice is, you know, after I'd done photography for so long, then doing modelling for a certain amount of time, I knew my light. Like, so there were certain things like that really help you as a photographer going into it as a model, because you know where your light is, or you know how things work, which is quite fun. You have that experience and you can sort of play to that dynamic environment in a way. That's really interesting. Nice. I didn't think of it from that perspective. But it's like less control though. But there's something fun about being in front of a camera. Like, I know that I make vlogs and stuff like that. So like, I'm used to being in front of a camera in a video context, like telling my story through me filming myself.
Sounds very narcissistic.
The selfie, yeah.
But like when it comes to people photographing me, it's like
you're more nervous.
Yeah, I go into a shell. It's really weird.
See, I love it.
Yeah, so I'm not used to it.
I'm like, yeah, you want to, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah.
Do you want to see someone's shoulder?
Yeah, I think I've always been a little bit of, I've never been camera shy, I don't think. I guess it depends on your insecurities. There were moments, I mean, I was a lot more insecure when we knew each other in college. Like I wouldn't get in front of the camera as much as I will now.
No, of course. Do you think that's why you're so interested in portraiture as a photographer?
Why? Because of the love for modelling.
Or your interest in the camera and the aesthetic of being in front of it.
Yeah.
And also maybe that plays a factor into why portraiture is so strong for you. Like why you feel very strongly towards it.
I think I love human emotion. I'm really intrigued by human emotion. I always said if I didn't study photography, I would have studied psychology. Because I just love the human being and kind of everything around that, pros and cons. So I think maybe there's an element of that I really like. And I think one of the other reasons why I love street photography so much is one thing that I hate is as soon as you tell someone, I'm going to take a picture of you, they stiffen up and they pose. I don't like that. I want to take a picture of you at your truest form. I want to take a picture of you when you're being real.
Yeah.
It's difficult as well though with street photography. I also like to take pictures of kids because kids are very innocent and they don't really think and they just do cool stuff. But that can get you in trouble. So what I tend to do, one thing that I learned at uni, my teacher told me, he went, take the shot, and then if the parent and guardian's there, go up and say, I've taken this shot, are you happy for me to, and that tends to work. So I do that. But yeah, street photography I love because you're capturing this like moment and you're capturing this kind of story of their life or their emotion or their psyche or something that's going through. I remember a shot that I got in Barcelona, actually, you say thinking about moving there, of this dad and daughter. The little girl was probably about 3 or 4, sat on the edge, like the outer kind of bench of a shop in Barcelona, like just demolishing this Mackey's, and both of their faces are just in this Mackey's, and I just got it's one of my favourite shots. Like I love it, and it's just kind of people just being people. I really I love shooting people. I really do. I don't know if I've really unpacked it
to
fully.
Why? Yeah. Because that could be a really interesting to explore. Your deeper love for it, like where it came from, what caused this interest in the human psyche and the human emotion in a way. And I think street photography is a weird one. Like I've always found the term street photography a little bit cringy because
it's documentary really at its core, isn't it?
It's photography. It's photography. It's the same as going and walking through a wood, you know. It's the only difference is you're walking the concrete jungle rather than the real one. Exactly. And it's like
your subjects are different.
But the thing that I've found, I can't remember if I remember discussing this with somebody, but I don't know if I've said it on a podcast. But street photography, right? You have to excuse me, but street photography as a man is difficult. Because
I understand. No, I completely understand. I've had a few guys on my course say that. Because
you're immediately seen as a threat. Like I'm 25, I'm in okay shape, all of those things. People will look at me and people like myself and deem me as a threat or wondering what the fuck I'm doing. Why am I walking around with a camera?
I completely understand.
Whereas I'm not bringing gender into it, but a female.
I completely understand. Like there are elements of that you have to bring. You know, gender's going to come into that. And then we're all, you know, me walking home late at night. If I see 2 guys walking on the same side of the road, it doesn't mean that they are going to hurt me. But naturally, it's that chimp paradox. It's a great book. Chimp versus the human. And in some elements, that chimp saves your life. But in other elements, it's like bark when in fact you shouldn't have done that. So I completely get it. Like if I take a picture of a kid, it doesn't look too bad. If you're taking a picture of a bunch of kids just kicking a ball around on the street because it's a great photo, nothing bad about that. A mum is going to see that very differently, and I completely get that. Like so many photographers would hide their cameras in their jackets and stuff back in however long ago, the stuff I used to study, it is difficult to kind of hide it. But even me, Barcelona, the amount of abuse that like, you can't fucking take my picture.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, actually, I can. I'm on public property, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is difficult, and you've really got to know the legalities around it. It's a very grey area, and you always have some kind of butthurt Karen being like, you can't take my picture, and I'm like, well, actually, you probably find that I can. I can, and I just did.
See, it's really interesting though. I'm guessing you know who Bruce Gilden is.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
So his work is street photography, like people on the street that he bumps into, but the work that he makes is so it's like portraiture, but really purposefully ugly.
Too like out of proportion, close.
It's so close up, and it's flash, but
it works. You've got a market for it. It's
totally.
It's just finding a market for it.
But the thing I find really interesting in that work is the psyche behind the way that I read it, for example, because I'm looking at it and thinking, God, look how, this person looks. Could you imagine looking like that? You know what I mean? To be brutally honest, you do.
But then it's bringing in, then you have to check yourself, don't you? Because that's my internalised misogyny coming out.
Yeah.
And it's quite good, because it's almost like these forms of art that's what I'd always loved contextual studies, because art almost doesn't have the shock factor anymore, because everything's been done.
Yeah.
And we should be pushing boundaries with art. We should be doing different things with art to make people have those reactions, because then people will have those reactions and then unpack it and go, fuck, I shouldn't have said that. What if someone said that about me? Like, and then you work on yourself, and you're constantly learning from all these different avenues. Yeah. It's brilliant.
It's such an interesting topic of conversation to have as well, like the self-development through discovery, and I think as artists, individuals as well can do this, but art is naturally sort of working as an artist anyways. You're naturally fairly in tune with your own emotional evaluation of things. You understand one's own mind fairly well.
My emotions. Yeah.
You hear that all the time.
Literally, like the amount of phone calls you've had. You okay, Nat?
Yeah, it's like, Nat, you good?
But that's the thing, isn't it? Like, I mean, there's so many. They joke, don't they? But art tends to come from some level of trauma or pain. You can tap into something, don't you? Yeah. So yeah, I think there's also the aesthetic within it. You're like, I'm that pathetic. Not pathetic's the complete wrong word. I'm that struggling artist that's gone through so much, and it's like, yeah. But we all have, in a way. It's creating that art to help you, others, and kind of get out of that situation or question the situation you're in, and then get out of it. And art really can be almost like a crutch, or to help certain kind of situations, or if you're struggling, do a self-portrait project, reflect on the self-portrait project. When it's done, it might answer the question.
Very true.
It's quite good at getting you out of like a funk.
Yeah, massively. And I think it's a fantastic form of inspiration as well. So I never used to write poetry.
Yeah. Like, have I inspired you?
Yeah, you actually did a little bit.
Good.
Yeah,
I'm
seriously.
glad. That's great.
Seriously, like
you inspired me to get back into photography.
That's so great. Good though. But like, that's the thing is, I remember sitting down for dinner with you, because we went to that like sushi restaurant.
Yeah. So good.
So good. I cannot wait for that shit to come back.
We'll go back. Yeah.
I'm going straight there. But like, I remember you saying about your poetry, and I hadn't read any at that time, and then you showed me some of your poetry, and I was like, oh, sick. And it inspired, because I'd always liked the idea of writing, but I'm terrible. My spelling's terrible. I got into art, so I didn't have to do any of that. You know what I mean?
I mean, I've been dyslexic as hell.
Yeah.
My auntie always told me, just write, then read it later, add the punctuation in, and spell check will do the rest. Don't have to get too upset. Just advice, write. Actually. Like, because I used to get really, really caught up on the punctuation, and my dad and my auntie would both sit down and be like, just write. Just write what you want to write. And then read through it later, and whenever you naturally want to take a pause, that's where a comma goes. And I learned punctuation really through speaking and learning about language, not about reading about it, not about learning in a textbook, because we're all different.
Yeah.
So please don't write because you're scared that your grammar is wrong or something. That can be edited. Just like you can take a great photo, but if the lighting's slightly off, you're not going to bin that photo. You're going to take it to Photoshop.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so like, it inspired me to start writing more. So I started writing more poetry, and like for this project that I'm working on at the moment about like escapism, I wrote a letter to myself, but as a poem.
Yes.
And it really inspired me to like look at written word in the same context as how I look at imagery, how I look at painting, how I look at these other art forms. And it's like really interesting how art inspires your development of an artist as well. Like I've had this conversation with so many photographers. I refer to everyone as artists. If you're a creative, you're an artist. Yeah.
You're a storyteller, you're
100%.
everything.
And I think it's really interesting how you can be so inspired by different forms of art. You know, I am not a fine art painter. Like I cannot paint.
But you're
for
inspired
shit.
by it
Massively. Like Renaissance portraiture.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel you.
Yeah.
I feel you. I get it. Like fully. I can go in there and be like, this is amazing. I wouldn't know how to create it.
No,
I'd love to try, but I wouldn't know even where to start. I mean, Van Gogh inspires me to like, but I not even know where to start.
Yeah.
So no, I completely get that.
So where did like the poetry thing start for you then?
It was so random.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever actually asked you. I'm actually genuinely intrigued.
It started in 2018, October 2018.
Okay.
I'd always been quite good with writing. My dad always used to be like, "Oh, write short stories" when I was a kid. And I was always very good at writing like I was speaking to you. But I'd never fully like properly like tried because of my dyslexic. So I kind of kept writing it off, and I was like, "Oh, I can't do that." And then I always loved film, and I was playing around with the idea of writing like a screenplay with a friend of mine, and we were going to do a film together. And we met up, and he was just going to read through some of the stuff that I'd written. And I'd written something while I was at work, while I was working in the call centre around, in 2018. And I was sat at I had a window desk, so I sat at my window and a bird came up. And my first poem you've read is Blackbird. Yeah. And I wrote that, and I initially wrote it as just a paragraph. And I had no idea it was a poem, I just wrote a little paragraph, put it in my little folder, and went and met Zeke. And Zito was like reading it, and he was like, "That's a poem." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "That's a poem." I went, nah, don't rhyme, fam. And he was like, "Nat, that's a poem. Like, seriously." And it was then that I kind of unpacked it and went, okay, so poetry doesn't have to be like Dr. Seuss. It doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to be these things. So as soon as I kind of found out that there weren't really any rules within it, and that it was just creative writing, I just played around with it. And a few people were like, you're actually quite good at that. And I went, oh, okay, I'll keep trying then. So yeah, and then I did a thing where I wrote a letter to myself in the form of a poem.
Interesting.
Which is Sunshine.
Cool.
Which is weirdly one of the most popular ones, one of the most vulnerable ones of the most popular ones, weirdly.
Interesting.
But yeah, and it just kind of literally went from there. And I go through stages. So sometimes I can write 5 poems a day, and then I won't write for 5 weeks. I never like to force it, which is probably lucky why I'm not doing it professionally, because I guess you have to start banging them out a lot more regularly when you're doing it professionally. Yeah. But it literally started as me writing a paragraph, somebody telling me it was a poem, and then me going, oh,
let me write more. So I thought that it was supposed to be this way, but actually I'm going to break the rules, or there aren't any rules. And it's that thing where it comes down to, you know, when people are like, oh, I can't do that, my teacher says it's wrong. And I'm like, fuck your teacher. I'm sorry. Fuck your teacher. Fuck the GCSE. Do what you want to do. Like, just, if you want to write. If someone's telling you that it's not good enough, fuck them. They're not doing it. Do it. Because for so long, I thought that I wasn't capable of doing that. And now I'm working on an exhibition with you. I'm working on something with Cloud. I'm working on a book. I'm writing poetry that is really good. Yeah. And if I'd listened to my teachers in school,
And this is school. To be fair, my university and college teachers have been nothing but, you can do this.
Yeah.
But, you know, my school and academic teachers, if I'd listened to them, I wouldn't have achieved half the stuff I've achieved now.
You'd be in such a different
place. So if I can say anything, like, don't always, if someone says you can't do it, prove them wrong. Please just prove them wrong. Like...
I love that energy.
You know? Just prove them wrong.
Just fucking prove them wrong, man.
Yeah, you can do it.
But that's so good, though. It's like, I think it's so interesting how multifaceted you are as an artist, and I think it's
But that's where that I called you that one time really upset, and I was like, I feel like an imposter. It's that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So many artists have it because they can do so many types of art, and then they're like, well, I'm not an artist because I'm doing that and that and that and that and that. I'm just copying everyone. It's like, no.
You're still developing in all of these areas. It's like, and imposter syndrome is so... When you start seeing any level of success in whatever you're doing, especially the creative industry, imposter syndrome is like immediate. It's straight away. And for me, opening this place and running a studio, it's like, I never thought I'd ever be in a position of having this amount of responsibility. Yeah. But now I am. And I felt for the first...
Do you like it though?
Yeah. For the first month, no. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like... why am I still working here when there's no art scene in Burnham of what I thought at the time?
But you're making it,
Yeah, well, there is an art scene.
Yeah.
But it's just not cultivated. It's not being
just tapping
given
into
the opportunity.
It. Yeah. Apparently there's a huge writing scene in Western, but I just hadn't tapped into it or seen it.
Yeah. And I think it is a case of going and finding those things. And it's like, I've been lucky enough to work with like King Alfred School and all these places around locally that have got amazingly talented young artists, and they're doing what they can to support them. That's where the idea for this place originally started. But that imposter syndrome, I think, runs deep in all artists. And I think the
market's so saturated as well, which doesn't help
massively.
And then, you know, we were talking, especially with Instagram, you compare, you know, I just type in poetry tag and
fucking
millions come up, which half of them are quotes, not poems. So it's just like, you're up against, well, it's not even it shouldn't be a competition. It's like,
but
comes down to, it is, but it isn't.
It shouldn't
like,
be, but it is.
I was talking to Cloud about it, and it's just like, you know, the amount of comparison that you have, and sometimes you've got to bring it back down to, no matter how much you share a candle's light, that initial candle's light's not going to be dimmed. No. You know, there's enough room for all of us to succeed, but it's very, very, very difficult with the amount of saturation. You know, the amount of illustrators, the amount of photographers, the amount of... If I vanished, there would be another photographer that would be creating work similar enough to take up that space. It's sad, but it doesn't mean that you step back and stop. It just means that you keep developing and you keep creating.
It's almost like a reality check. It's like... I had never thought of it in that sense, that if you know, if I were to stop, would anyone
just take up that space?
Yeah, or would anyone be that bothered? You know what I mean? Like,
would anyone
really
notice?
Interesting.
Where's Jacob?
Yeah. Maybe we should try a social experiment.
Bye.
Do you want to just dip for a while?
We're just going to cry because no one's going to notice. We're going to be like, oh my God.
Nobody's tagged us on Instagram, Natalie. What the fuck?
Exactly. No. I think maybe in 5 years we can try the social experiment.
Yeah, fuck it, let's try it. Let's do it.
I'm not emotionally prepared yet.
No, well, I think that's been a good conversation, Natalie. Like,
I have to go and check my post is actually being left on my door and not in my bin.
Well, let's promote you first before you run away anywhere. Before you run off.
Yeah.
So where can everybody find your stuff, Nat? I know you're building a website at the moment, so Instagram, Twitter, stuff like that.
Instagram, I don't have not a creative Twitter. I've got, so it's Natalie Male Art.
Cool.
On Instagram, guys, give me a follow. Or it's a long website because it's currently still...
Oh, is it like a
It's currently still
one?
Wix.
Yeah.
So it's like natty.wixsite. But it's technically www.wix.com /natty00/head in the clouds. But it will be easier to just find the link on my Instagram.
I'll tell you what, I'll link everything down below.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just literally link my Instagram.
Cool.
But it's just creating through lockdown. So it'll be slow, but it's happening.
Yeah, 100%. But don't I said this to you on the phone the other. What was it? Yesterday? No, day before.
Literally last night.
Yeah, it was last night. Yeah. Well, you know what's funny is I was always planning to get you on the show.
No, it's fine.
Like,
don't worry.
I got a picture of like the original whiteboard with your name, like episode 12, I think it was.
Yeah.
I was gonna have you in,
Sick.
but a guy that I was meant to have on, he fell ill Sunday. He texted me Sunday. He's like, I'm not going to be able to make it on the podcast. And we were meant to record yesterday. So I was like, fuck. I was like, right, Natalie. I know she's A, really interesting. B, I'd love to get her on.
Yeah.
Fuck it, let's get her on.
No,
you know
what
I mean? So
seriously.
it was good to talk. And it's like,
I've never done it before, so it's cool.
Well, I hope you've
First
enjoyed
podcast.
it.
I actually really did.
You get so, like, I say this to everyone. Yeah. The first 5 minutes is always a bit like,
but then you really do ease into it. It's nice.
I might use you. Nice. I might use you as the poster for the podcast, but to get more people on and be like, look. But yeah, guys, to everybody watching and or listening to this podcast, all of Natalie's links are in the description below. Make sure you go check out her amazing poetry, her photography.
There's some art, but it's
I really want you to release your book that you showed me. We need to make something happen.
Yeah, we need to make
with
more
that.
of them.
100%.
We'll sit down with like Ye, Cloud and I, because we were thinking like it's really cool. It's like poetry, but then all of the art for the poetry is designed in such a way that you can almost do it as a colouring book. Yeah.
Don't tell too much.
I won't, but we're playing around with the idea of maybe something like that, especially with the lockdowns.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah, it would be.
So stay tuned.
That's going to be sick.
Could be cool.
But yeah, guys, make sure to go check out Nat's work. Also, I'm linked in there if you want to check me out for my rambles. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this podcast and stay safe.